It was like one of the really big bottles, but there was 80 bottles of piss. Imagine the madness. And he just walked down the stairs shaking his head saying, bloody jumbo edition. Sheer madness. Sheer madness. Da. I imagine loads of kids play like detective and pretend to be detective when they're kids, right? That's what I did. I did it as a project with my sister. It was like my first project, and we called it Top Secret. Now, the good thing was that we actually, unlike a lot of kids where it's like the main thing that you're investigating is like, oh, who's that on the phone? And it's just like your nan phoning your dad and stuff. And then you make a report on it. Loads of good stuff actually happened to us. Yeah, that was absolute madness. My uncle narrowly escaped murder. We got our car stolen, and it was absolutely, like, we got our car stolen, so we phoned the police and all that, and there's not very much they can do except keep an eye out for it. And he, without trying, recognised the number plate the next day. So within 24 hours of our car being stolen, he's seen it, right? And what he did was, instead of phoning the police, he followed them secretly in his car. And they stopped outside what was a very well-known drug dealer's house. God knows what went on in there. Very dangerous, masses of gangs and stuff in there. So they parked it and went in. So now our car, has been left unattended. So he parks his car, gets in, breaks in again to our car, hotwires it, and tries to drive it away was the intention. But the thing is, the hot wiring took quite a long time and it's quite hard to do it. And he was in the car and he heard the creaking of the door of the drug house opening. So the massive gang is going to come out and see him in their car, and they're very dangerous, and they could seriously kill him or beat him up or whatever. Very dangerous. He's they're just about to come out, and he gets it going and he drives off. We had the running commentary. We weren't there at the time, obviously, but we had the live running commentary by my nan while that was all happening, because she could see it across the road. I can't remember if I lost it or what it even was. I think it was an owl rubber. Went to the zoo. I was at the height of my top secret project. I think I might have even thrown the owl rubber into the owl cage, so I had an excuse to actually try and get in, and I managed somehow. But it was an owl cage, so there would have been a top on it. All I remember is I was very young. I was in the owl cage, massive crowd, everyone's looking, there's a kid in the zoo, mental. The guards had to come and get me out. That was a good report as well. One time I was in a shop and I actually found on the floor some genuinely top secret documents, which was really good for a kid playing top secret. I was about 8. And it was like, you know how when a car drives off and the oil is behind it and it leaves a trail? Someone had obviously walked around the shop and they'd left these envelopes around, and I don't know if they did it deliberately, like, you know how you see like those people in the trench coats, they meet on a park bench and they leave a briefcase without making it obvious they've left it. I don't know if they did that, or more likely was that they just dropped it. But it was really reckless, because inside were like thousands of dollar checks, blank checks, outrageous stuff going on. We found it. I knew it was a big deal, right? So I gave it to my dad, and I said, look, I'm playing top secret and all that, so I kept my eye out for this. This genuinely is top secret, but I know that this is bigger than something I should be doing right now, because I've come across this. So he said, oh yeah, that's good, thank you. Sent it off to the address that was inside, and they were very grateful. They sent back £5 for an ice cream. Cheers. my dad saw some burglars at the window, and he went, two kids, teenagers, two thugs, were smashing in a fence, and they were about to smash in someone's door. My dad went down with a cricket bat. They ran off. Got a bit out of hand though, because the next day we saw something else that looked a bit dodgy. Out comes the cricket bat again. Yeah? My dad phoned the police, went down with a cricket bat, and it was actually just it was the friend of our next door neighbour, the girl that lived next door. Her friend had just come round, and it was my dad jumping over a fence with a cricket bat. And the police turned up as well with like the riot gear and everything, jumping over the fence. And the little boy turned out to just be like a little kid. Said, "What, me?" He was like a teenager. He said, "What, the police for me? I'm just coming around to visit." So it got out of hand, so the cricket bats were put away. They haven't come out since. It was quite shameful because that girl next door was the same girl that I mentioned earlier on in this documentary, that I turned up wearing my Roger and Freddie clothes looking like a mentalist, and she said, "Why are you dressed like a fucker?" She will come up every now and then because there's been loads of embarrassing incidents for me. I used walkie-talkies a lot. I was like really pleased with them, and I managed to pick up a police signal. So I actually listened to policemen talking on walkie-talkies, and it went in between that and just like taxi drivers. So it was either like really boring, loads of people saying, "Oh, what time did you finish?" But then I came across this feed that was like a policeman's feed. So loads of stuff actually happened that was pretty good. For me playing Top Secret, like I say, normally it's just like your nan's on the phone and you're trying to make a big report out of it. Look, I found this note from Betty, and what we used to do is if you put that up to the light, you know, like how when you put a £10 note up to the light you can see the line through it?
Oh, yeah.
So that we made this with, we put Tipp-Ex through it and then folded it over each other, so when you put it up to the light you can see that it's definitely from one of us to another one. Yeah, you can see it there.
Well, that's really clever.
Yeah. And you go where you can't see it. We were really young at the time. There was a hippie that crashed a car into a wall, and I called the police as a kid. It was a group of us. And one thing led to another, but I was trying to intervene and make it my project and trying to do a top secret report on it. And the policeman was there for serious business. He told me to shut up. I was very, very young. And the policeman telling me as a kid to shut up was what ended Top Secret. My Uncle Patrick saw that I was doing this stuff with Top Secret, and to get involved, he said that I could send him the documents through the post, and to make that like secretive and all of that, if he replies and he sends me something in an envelope, check the stamp, because the stamp would be it would be like a flap, and underneath the stamp would be a code. You know, like this isn't like just a few weeks ago, this was when I was a kid. He referred to me as Agent 006.5. When I asked why, he said, "Oh, James Bond's 007 and you're slightly better." So he referred to me as 006.5. I refer to myself as 6.5 nowadays, but that's in reference to something else. Woo! I later on did business studies at school and really enjoyed it, and it really came in helpful for when I was pushing my show, right? But I always have tried to like turn my hand to business in a very unsuccessful and disastrous way. One of them was the Rudo Comic, or the Rudo Comic, which I co-produced as a kid with someone who has since become a crack addict criminal, and drove a truck through a busy town centre and got arrested for it. But anyway, back in the day it was a bit more innocent. They're not quite, because we co-produced the Rudish/Rudo Comic. I wanted it to be called the Rudo. He wanted it to be called the Rudish Comic. That was one of the main differences in management, difference of opinion. That's why it went into liquidation, probably. But the long and short of it is that was another incident when my mum had to come to school to confiscate the master copies of the Rudish Comic, because they weren't so much Rudish as full-on rude. We took things like Beano characters, such as Minnie the Minx, made them into Minnie the Minge and things like that. The kids liked it, That business didn't take off though. I later turned my hand to publishing Harris Humour comic. They've all been thrown away. In fact, there's only one little remaining tear from the comic that still exists. This here is the only surviving part of Harris Humour. Harris Humour magazine, that started as pretty good. It was quite innocent, just jokes and stuff. It then suddenly became a platform for my adolescent and pubescent discovery, such as like weekly columns and updates on how big my knob was now. Like now it's grown another inch. Just loads of childish humour, such as me drawing, you know, swastikas and moustaches on page 3 models and things like that. So I voluntarily threw all those away because it became embarrassing. The content also became basically exactly the same as what was in that year's Russ Abbott annual. Sometimes word for word. The reason Harris Humour came about was it went hand in hand with another incident, which was I like Viz magazine, which I've actually been in as well since. But Viz magazine is a comedy magazine and it's sort of quite innocent, but it isn't for kids, so it's on the top shelf, right? Now, I didn't realise the relevance of the top shelf when I was a kid, so I bought Viz and my mum was okay with that, and I also bought Beavis and Butthead comics, which are also like for like teenagers, not young kids. But I was okay with that. But they were on the top shelf. So I said to Mum, I just looked at the top shelf and I just thought, there must be, I like Beavis and Butthead, I like Viz, I might like some of these other magazines. So I wrote a list of them and I said, Mum, can you go out and get these magazines? This is me as a young kid. Imagine the madness if you're my mum. Imagine if your kid gave you a list of things saying like, oh, Smut, Playboy, Murder She Scroped, whatever the spin-offs were, porn magazines. But I didn't know what they were. So there's a big incident with that because she thought I was a pervert at a really young age. But it's since been understood that I just wanted Beavis and Butthead comic strips. Other business projects I made, I used to take sticks, branches that were so big, about the size of a pencil, legitimate branches, or, you know, little ones, sharpen them with a pencil sharpener, and then draw on the lead so that it looked like this real, actual novelty branch pencil that I'd actually bought from a shop.
What are you sharpening that for?
Because I need to do a... what I used to do, do you know how I used to fund my wrestling magazine when I made it? Is I used to sharpen these and then pencil on the tip as if there was lead in it, and then sell them on the last day of half term so that there would be no backlash, so people thought they were legitimate pencils, then I'd have money. I thought there was quite a lot of ingenuity involved in this.
Definitely.
Definitely.
They sell those in the gift shops, don't they?
Yeah, real ones.
Yeah. Yeah, we could bring something back for Charlie.
But there's also
for
bloody
holiday
thick that they just,
Stephen,
after the holidays, they'd forget, you see. Idiots. Actually, it wasn't like I was selling them for £4, so for 10p that's actually an alright novelty thing.
Nice.
For an 8-year-old.
Well, you could have said it was a trick one if they'd come back on you.
Seriously, you used to sell it to 8-year-olds?
Yeah.
And how old were you?
I was 8.
Edward. Yeah. Would work for 2 seconds, though, would it, with the lead on there?
It's the thing. Yeah, that's true. Oh, that might have been what I did as the sample. I went, no, look. Yeah, look.
Yeah.
Well. So I just made loads of those in about an hour and sold them around school, and I did that to fund the production of my YWB magazine, YWB being a much bigger story in itself, which we won't go into now, but the name of my promotion that I wrestled with my friends and cuddly toys at that age. And I made a magazine about it, speaking of, you know, just trying to do more. Everybody plays wrestling as kids. I tried to do every aspect of it. It was like my whole life I did it instead of studying. And I'm glad I did when I came to wrestling school. It really helped me out, all the experience. But I kept in mind selling those pencils. It sucks because it came back to haunt me later because I always used to think I was ahead. I always used to think I was like I knew what I wanted to do and I could sell to kids and I was like ahead for a kid. But then fast forward to an adult and it seems like I've lost my advantage over it. It's been forgotten that I did so much stuff that was good for a young age. And it contributed to me being quite demoralised later on. trying to take it to the next level, like I mentioned, and do what other kids didn't do, I went round my friend Sam's house, and we used to run wrestling promotions and do all sorts of mad matches, like on top of big piles of mud and tennis courts. And he lived directly opposite the rugby ground, and that rugby ground was regularly on Sky Sports TV, and you could see on certain camera angles his top bedroom window. So when we would have wrestling matches on the bed, we would open the curtains and try to time it so that our matches were on TV in the background. Who else has done that? So we could say our promotion was on Sky Sports. I don't have any of the footage though. I didn't think to record it, which is really unlike me. There was a thing that we called Festive Fun that I ran with the girl next door, where we sold tickets for other kids to come round and do. It was like a fair in the garden, and my personal favourite ride was coating a slide in water and going down it on a skateboard into a big pool of water. That was my favourite ride. My younger sister favoured the less dangerous apple bobbing. But it was good because I also held like wrestling events there. Like I'm saying, like kids do stuff, but like I tried to take it one step further because we actually sold tickets to this fair, right? And when I did, like other kids wrestle with cuddly toys, I actually did it as a show and sold tickets to my neighbour. And we made this glass window, and I threw a cuddly toy, or I think I had the cuddly toy throw me somehow through this window, and it smashed, and it was like a mimic of this segment that I saw on WWE TV where Shawn Michaels threw Marty Jannetty through a window on the barber shop. It was an interview segment. Taking the idea of selling tickets, all of this comes in later on, where I thought there might be an audience for this, because what went down well is this ridiculous idea. If you've seen The Simpsons, where Bart Simpson says he's going to jump the gorge on a skateboard and like it goes around the school, everyone's interested. I keep in mind that's a cartoon, so mine was a bit lower level, but it was real. It was this most insane, dangerous pile of bricks on a really busy road, a really flimsily stacked up pile of bricks with a ramp, and then me saying I was going to go over it on a BMX, which I did, but then as I in the air I like landed on my chest on the front of the bike, and I was like led across the bike with my belly on the seat. And then I saw a car come in, and I was going straight into the car, and the car wasn't even, like, he wouldn't have seen me come in, so I had to voluntarily wobble myself and fall off, skidded, and it was all that grazing your knees, but I had to do it to avoid a collision with a car. But I did make it over the bricks. Speaking of the BMX, nowadays, like, for some reason, loads of kids, teenagers seem to go on bikes that are too small for them. But back then, it was kind of a running joke throughout the street, with the girl next door again, that I was getting too big for this bike, right, and I was really, and the day that she moved, I got a new bike, so she always thought I was on that bike, that BMX bike, and I was too big for it. As a joke, when I was much older, I'm talking like in my 20s, as a joke, I put my kids' clothes on and went on that BMX bike, which we still have in the garage, as a joke, out in the front of the road. And she walked past and saw me on it. So she must have thought I'd been on it, in those clothes, presumably, since she last saw me. Which is ridiculous. I fell off that bike once. I was on that wall right there, and my bike was positioned just upright, somehow, and I fell backwards off the wall onto the bike and kept my leg up savagely. That bike is classic. I was just going to say badly Nikki coming now because I was on this bike, because she always used to come. She always used to come though, innit? When I was on this bike. Of everything I've talked about here, pure piss is the most madness business idea that I've ever come up with. Because I put a lot of time into it. And I can't really explain how it came about, to be honest. Pure piss is basically me pissing into a bottle, putting a label on it saying product of pure piss incorporated, and trying to sell that around school. And I didn't get to that point. The point that I did get to was having about 80 bottles stuffed under my bed, and then my dad and mum finding it and thinking I was a right nutter, and at this point thinking like their kid's really weird, and and I said, "Oh, Dad, it's just my pure piss business." He said, "What?" And he also saw 2 other bottles of toothpaste spit, which is where I clean my teeth and then spit into the bottle, spit the toothpaste out. That was like a side business. That was like a bonus bottle you'd get if you bought 10 bottles of pure piss, I suppose. But that bit hadn't quite taken off. But there was 80 bottles of piss. Imagine the madness if anyone did it, let alone a young kid. It's like I say, I used to try to do loads of mad stuff. I think I always thought that like sometimes people don't. There's a reason why people haven't done stuff. It's because it wouldn't work, or it's no good, or it's just too mad, or it's pointless. And I used to think at a young age some stuff was quite constructive though, actually, and quite good for my age. That particular one was mental, and it was just an example of me thinking, oh, this hasn't been done before, brilliant, I'll be the first to do it. The end of Pure Piss was my dad making me tip them all down the toilet, and then him saying, and what the bloody hell's this? And I said, oh, it was like one of the really big bottles, and I said, oh, that's a jumbo edition. And he just walked down the stairs shaking his head saying, bloody jumbo edition.